So that's a great question. Thanks. So the role of finance is clearly to hunt for value and to drive value. And I believe and we believe that S&OP is a source of not just operational excellence, but through that a source of great value. Therefore, it's a very natural fit that finance and finance colleagues should be not only interested in driving S&OP, but embrace it wholeheartedly, simply because it's a source of great value for the business. So it's interesting, I've been asked this question before, and I'm not quite sure whether we started to sort of create that alignment between volume and values. That's the honest answer. But I think I'll tell you what we did. What we tried to do was to step back and say, what's the best way to make S&OP a success? And quite simply, it is to drive a single plan, the single heartbeat through which the entire rhythm of the organization runs. And when you do that well, having an alignment of volume and value becomes a very natural outcome rather than a top-down force-fit measure. So I don't think we kind of made a very concerted attempt. It was an outcome of the basic belief and core actions we were driving. Then of course at the edges there were certain technical points on how we could have improved that alignment, which we drove separately, but that's very secondary. Primary reason was one set of plans. So I think that's very important that the entire organization believes that, as I said before, that S&OP is a source of value. And it's a source of value and agility. And let me explain why is that. So take the case of multiple plans versus a single plan. Now, very obviously, if you're having multiple plans in the business, you're not just inefficient, you get slow in your responsiveness. Because half the time you're spending debating internal numbers which are different across the organization rather than worrying about competition. So your focus moves away from winning externally to worrying about internal stuff. The third thing I would say is if you're having too many multiple plans, you're actually not caring about your people. Because what's happening is you're having these 4 sets of people talking about different stuff, and the energy of the organization moves away from driving growth and winning externally to winning internally. So that for me is the biggest source of prize for S&OP. We'll try and do this again. But let's go to the last question.
Okay. And
then we'll come back to this point because I think this can be sharpened. So I think that's a great question because we have been blessed with 2 years of great performance. But then again, we are in a mindset of beating it and repeating it. So we want to move from good to great. And that's not just about having strategic clarity and vision on what are the choices we will be making, but also about having that passion for operational excellence, and be that in driving processes like net revenue management, or be that in ensuring that we take S&OP to the next level. There's a lot more we can still do in the S&OP space, which we'll keep driving because we've seen the benefits not just on growth, and it's hard to quantify, but I'm certain a part of our growth is attributable to the way we have driven S&OP. But how it's improved our cost focus. For example, our business waste is now 65% less than what it was 3 years back. And our cash levels through much lower stock levels have been absolutely amazing. So I'm sure we can do a lot more than what we have done thus far. So I think 2 things here would be helpful. First is how can we democratize S&OP? What I mean by that is there's a part of S&OP which appears a bit like a black box. Something goes inside an engine and something comes out and it is treated as gospel's truth. How can we make it simpler for people to understand it? And also how can it be faster in making changes? Currently it takes 3 to 4 weeks for a run to happen. Can it be done in 3 hours, for instance? So that's one. The second one is about people capabilities, because it's about how the knowledge gets translated across groups of people, because people move. And I say that not just about the hard stuff, but also about the softer stuff, about the belief. And I'm sure these 2, when they are driven together, will create magic for any organization. Actually, while many things, but the core of it is basically one, which is to have everyone in the organization believe that the right thing for the business is to have one plan, not multiple plans. Quite simply, it's common sense. Because if you have multiple plans, you're using one plan for stocks, you're using one plan for BMI, you're using one plan for growth. It's chaos. So it's quite simple. You're just inefficient if you're having multiple plans. The second part is, if you have multiple plans, the teams in the organization are focused on internal alignment rather than winning externally. So the focus moves away from where it should go. And the last point is, if leadership behavior is driving multiple plans, honestly, I'll say that leadership doesn't care for its people. Because you're, rather than using your resources to take them to the next S curve, you're basically making them create lots of different versions of truth, which is basically a huge waste of time. So I think getting to one single plan with one set of commonly aligned assumption is a huge source of value and agility. So that's the one big thing I like to believe we did well.